So first, a brief introduction on the what and why of unit testing. I assume most of you already used unit tests in other projects. Unit tests, as the name gives away, are used to test small units of code. In the case of a C# application, which Xamarin Forms applications really are, that small unit of code under test is typically a method. So we'll write tests that will test a given method, sometimes with different parameters. Then we'll assert the result that is returned. When writing unit tests, we'll typically write tests that test the different parts within a method. We'll want to cover as many possible cases as we can. This way, we can be sure that our unit tests are covering all the different ways our method can be used or executed. In a large application, you'll end up with a large amount of unit tests typically. That means that it must be easy to run these tests. Tools such as Visual Studio have a test runner on board to automate the execution of your tests. Because you'll have a lot of tests typically, developers won't be happy if running the tests is slow. And finally, what do we test? Well, in general, we test the public API of a class. We will, in other words, in most cases, test the public API, so the public methods of a class. The private methods are part of the inner workings and typically aren't tested using unit tests. Note that this depends definitely on the application you're working on. When adding unit tests, we'll more easily find bugs in our code. This of course improves the quality of the application's code. We may not only find bugs when we initially write our code, but when we make changes to our application, our unit tests create some sort of layer of defense around our code. When we make a change and all of a sudden our tests start failing, it means that we have introduced a change that breaks the original intent of the code. When we make a change and all of a sudden our tests start failing, it means that we have introduced a change that breaks our original intent of the code. Without unit tests, this error would go often unnoticed. Finally, a good set of tests is also a good documentation for the code under test. It describes how we should, as a developer, use that code.